Okay, perfect. Hi guys, my name is Peter Harrison, a part of Integrative Performance, partnering with the Eastern Suns to help really with physical performance and strength and conditioning. This is our second year now involved with the club, and the first year really revolved around having some sort of physical performance program for our NBL1 teams. So we're continuing to do that this year, and both the club and ourselves are keen to provide some more activities and services to the club as a whole. So this really is a part of, I guess, some coach education work that we want to be a part of. We want to keep offering and adding and growing, the performance of the club. That's right from our development athletes in our lower leagues all the way up to our NBL1 team. So really, this is, I guess, a way that we can access, hopefully, the vast majority of the players coming through our club. And the best way to do that is obviously through you guys, our coaches. The goal or I guess the topic of this presentation or this workshop is really creating some ideas around how you can integrate physical performance training or strength and conditioning training into basketball sessions themselves. I will try and keep it, relatively brief. There's some detail which I'll try and touch on, but really, if there's any detail at all, in specific to your context, your team as a coach, if you're interested to chat or discuss further, the best way that we can do this is if you get in touch with us after this workshop with our details are provided at the end. Please get in touch, and I'm happy to have as a part of our agreement, I'm happy to have a 20, 30-minute chat with any coach because that's really how we want to make a difference. So if it's going to be useful for you, then please get in touch. In saying that, I guess we're speaking to a wide variety of coaches, and that's why, it's easier to discuss specific circumstances, specific age groups, and drills with yourselves as individual coaches. But today is a bit of an opportunity where I can talk about, okay, physical performance as a whole and why is it important in basketball development and performance. I can talk briefly about some ideas about how to implement some physical training drills and ideas in basketball training, like I mentioned. And lastly, I'll talk about something which you can all put into place in terms of quality, I guess, warm-ups for short-term performance. So I'm talking warm-ups both for training and also for game day as well. So the first section here, what's the role of physical performance in basketball? And when I'm talking about basketball, we're talking about both the development of basketball players, but also the performance of teams and players. So I guess what we're talking about here, firstly, is physical performance as a whole is, we're talking about physical qualities, and these can be isolated physical qualities like endurance and strength and mobility and things like that. So we can break those down into different categories like we have done here. But I guess you can have um, a broad measure of physical performance as well. We have strong players who are physical players because of the sum of all of their, smaller parts at an overall high level. So, generally that might be strength, power, speed, agility, endurance. Very rarely we have players that have, strengths in all these categories, but it can certainly happen. And that's, a combination of these creates an overall physical profile of a player. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about physical performance is, all right, we've got physical performance as a whole, but we have an understanding that physical performance as a whole is made up or determined by a bunch of smaller or different categories or different physical qualities. When it comes to defining what physical training is, and this is really important, what I'm talking about here for the purpose of this workshop is physical training is something or a training exercise or training drill which is planned with the specific objective of improving a physical quality. Okay. So a physical drill, which is designed to improve strength and power, or which is designed to improve speed and agility. You might have drills which are multifactorial. So maybe it's a drill which is aiming to improve speed and agility, but it also involves a basketball skill. So maybe it's finishing, or maybe it's defending, whatever it might be. Um, so I guess the important distinguisher there is what we're working on when it comes to physical training is it can't just be any basketball drill, which involves agility. That I wouldn't refer to as physical training. I want a drill, or what we're talking about is for physical training to improve agility, is a drill which is specifically designed to improve how a player can move laterally, to be agile. So I think just doing something doesn't make it an agility drill. Just like in a basketball sense, just because a basketball drill involves passing doesn't mean it's a passing drill. It doesn't mean we're improving passing, the skill of our players to pass accurately or at the right time. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to talk about. So physical training, training with the objective of improving, a specific one or multiple of these physical qualities. The important part to highlight, of course, here, like I briefly mentioned before, is that physical training doesn't have to be done in isolation. It can and ideally should be integrated into other parts of training. Um, and we've got our four broad categories, right, of sports performance, and this can be done in any sport, in any circumstance. Is you've got the physical component of performance, we have a technical component of performance, and we also have tactical and psychological components. And all of these are really, really important in their own right. This presentation isn't about saying physical is the most important. No, it's about identifying that, yes, all of these four different categories are really important. And the best coaches find a way to improve their team's performance or to have their teams performing by training a certain combination of these four different categories. Like I said, it's not always effective and certainly shouldn't always be done in isolation. We can't just say, okay, well, physical training, you guys go and do your physical training on your own. We'll work on technical stuff here. Same goes for tactical and psychological. We need to have some form of being able to collaborate these four things and train them together as well. Because when it comes to performance on the court, we obviously need to combine them all together. When we come back to the determinants of sporting performance, it's obviously a really complex thing. There's no one combination of these four things, which is always the right combination as a coach or for a team to work on. So we can talk about we can talk endlessly about the different components of these and what which one of these categories is more important in different circumstances. Um, and you can come up with lots of different examples in professional sport and also junior sport, even of athletes or teams that have lots of different strengths. We've got really strong, powerful teams, but maybe they lack on the psychological side or the tactical side, and vice versa as well. So really, the important thing to acknowledge here is that physical qualities do play a key role in performance, just like the other components here. And if we can improve these physical qualities, the important part is that we can directly improve our performance. So if imagine a team, if we can all jump 1 centimeter higher, that certainly helps that team from a physical perspective, even if all other factors remain the same. That slight improvement in vertical is going to help us a little bit at some stage. Same goes for a little bit quicker. Same goes for if we have more endurance. Same goes for if we're more agile, we can attack and defend better. If we can combine all these things together, all these different physical qualities, and improve them just by a little bit, then we're doing our job as physical performance coaches or as coaches yourselves. These pillars also interact with each other. So rather than just saying, okay, if we can jump 1 centimeter higher or run, 0.1 seconds faster over 10 meters, yeah, that's important. But the real advantage I think that it has is the interaction that physical training and physical qualities has on the other aspects of the game. So if we develop our upper body strength in our athletes and we're stronger and more powerful in our pushing action, of course, that has a direct influence on our technical skills. We open new doors to being able to pass longer, to being able to pass more accurately, more consistently, whatever it might be in that action. And then there's lots of different other, it's just one example of how physical training or a physical quality can influence a technical aspect. If we're talking about now about a whole team, if our team becomes a bit more agile and becomes stronger endurance runners, that opens the door to different tactical aspects as well that a coach and team can play. We can press fast, or we can play fast and play slow. If you've got a team that doesn't have endurance, probably not a good idea to keep playing as fast as you can because you're going to run out of gas. So again, the interaction that these play as well is also important to consider rather than simply saying, okay, well, yeah, of course, we want our athletes to be a bit stronger. Think about the influence that physical qualities can actually have on your game in a broader perspective. I guess a quick reminder and a bit of a connection here between we're not always talking simply about performance or winning. We're talking about development as well. So if assuming we've got coaches here at Eastern Suns in our level here, we've got all the way from development younger athletes to, okay, we've got teams also that are there to develop but also to win. But all these four factors, regardless of whether you're a coach because you want to improve your players, or if you're a coach because you want to get the best performance out of your players as possible, or a combination of both, nothing changes there. All of these factors are still important for performance, and therefore they're all important factors that we need to consider when we are developing players as well. So even if you're not in the game from a performance perspective, if you just want to make your players a little bit better, then the physical component of training is certainly going to be one important part of the puzzle as well. Um, the next part, I guess, if we've got an understanding that, or a belief or training philosophy that physical performance does play an important role in performance and development of basketball athletes, then the next step is making sure that our coaching skills and our resources and our time and activities are also made to reflect this. Because if we say, oh yeah, it's really important, but if we look at our coaching skills and resources and we don't have these, then that's certainly an area that we can improve. And I guess this is a part, I guess one of the goals of this workshop and this program to work with yourselves as coaches. And if there's any areas that you guys would like assistance on, then that's what we're here for to help the club with. So the question is, if your philosophy identifies physical performance as key, do your coaching resources and the time dedicated to training reflect this, or do they not? And this is a nice little way of visualizing this, or perhaps a bit of a process for you guys where you can, first of all, identify what you think in terms of your coaching philosophy. What do you think is important as a coach? If you divide um, the game into these four different aspects, the physical, the technical, tactical, and psychological. If I got you to draw a pie chart, sorry, on the left in terms of what you thought was important, if you think one area is a bit more important than the others, then that quadrant's going to just be a little bit bigger. I think it's a good activity. If you guys can draw that to visualize where you think, where you think each of these different areas are important to develop in terms of your specific context, that is a really good thing to do. And the next part of that is identifying if you look back at your training, either currently or in the past few months or past year, whatever it might be, can you then compare that to how your training time and resources are actually spent? So if you spend a lot of time doing technical drills or tactical drills, then that quadrant's going to be a little bit bigger. And I guess the main objective of this isn't to say whether your time allocation is right or wrong. It's simply to make sure that what you're spending time on in training is actually aligned with what your coaching philosophies are. And I guess the important part here is we've all got time, right? We've all got time to do it. And we've all got limited time. So there's no coach which has more or less time constraints than the others. We've all got, X amount of time to train with our athletes. So if, time is a reason or it's going to be a reason behind why you allocate certain time to some training aspects and not to others, and that's okay. But the way that we should be looking about this and thinking about it is, well, I've got limited time in training, so therefore we have to work on the physical aspect of training in this way. Okay. It's not saying, oh, I've got limited time, so we don't work on physical training. And I think that's an important difference between how we can look at that as coaches. Certainly, if you have identified that technical, tactical, and psychological aspects of basketball are all far more important than physical training, that's fine, and that's how your training time should be indicated. But the question is, how then are you going to work on the physical aspects? Are you going to help your players or refer your players to strength and conditioning coaches? Are you going to give them a program at home that they can do and follow? Or do you simply think that they don't need it? So again, this is about aligning your thoughts and philosophies as a coach and doing a bit of a review on, okay, well, where do you actually spend your time and what skills and knowledge do you have as a coach and in your coaching team in these different aspects? It's a good little, I think, a coach self-reflection, and it can also be a peer reflection and player reflection process that as well. If anyone wants to probably dive a little bit deeper into that, into their coaching skills and self-assessment, then please get in contact and I'll be able to send you a tool which you can break that down into a little bit more detail rather than just drawing that simple pie chart. So I guess to finalize this first section is we've established that physical qualities are an important part of both developing basketball players, but also having basketball teams perform as well. So we may or may not have identified gaps in some of your coaching skills or resources. So whether that, I guess, aligns in terms of your skills or the time that you're devoting to that in training, then that's, I guess, for you guys to review and evaluate. But either way, we should be on board with the idea that some aspect of training, or there should be some sort of resource which is devoted to the physical development of our athletes. I guess some unlikely successful strategies to improve this area, if that is an area that you think we can work on. You can't just keep doing the same thing, right? If you've identified that this is an area that we can improve, then we've got to try and do something about that. So again, feel free to action anything that you possibly can from this workshop. And if you need or are interested to, then please make sure you get in contact if you're not sure where to go from there. Some more unlikely successful strategies are, leaving the responsibility purely on next year's coach to do it. Okay. So if you're a coach that says, oh no, I won't do that, but maybe next year's coach can, or maybe it was last year's coach's job. They should have worked on their fitness or their speed or their agility last year, but I won't do it. The kids or the players themselves, we can give all the responsibility on the players or to their parents. The important part, obviously, it's no one's role, it's everyone's role. So it's not to say that none of these stakeholders play a role in this at all. is to say that, okay, well, us as coaches, we play a role, but also last year's coach should have played a role. Next year's coach should play a role. Our players need to do something themselves if they want to improve physically, and the parents of our younger players as well, hopefully can help. So yes, yeah, the goal of this slide isn't to put the blame or responsibility solely on anyone. It's to say, hey, look, we've all got a role to play here. How can we play our role, and how can we help these other stakeholders as well, or coaches, players, parents, improve on this in this aspect as well. Cool. So let's go into some more practical strategies now. So I'll run through a couple of our different areas of physical performance that can work on, and I'll try and provide as many practical solutions and ideas of drills for you guys as we can. In terms of barriers, again, hopefully we've been through this. Hopefully we've identified that, yeah, it's an important phase or important part of the game in addition to other aspects. We've identified that, okay, well, even if you aren't a physical performance coach or you don't have a really strong background or education in physical performance, you can still play a role by referring players to people that have those skills, or by educating yourselves in that area as well. We've mentioned the time thing. We've all got time, so this is all about how you allocate that and our time and resources in our programs. Two of the really, probably the hardest things to do, and the most genuine barriers are, logistically, how can we put these into a session? And two, just having more ideas and expertise and examples of how we can do this. So I hope, post this, I hope you're talking to other coaches about how you can do different things yourselves, because that's a great way to learn. But also hope you can take a couple of things out of this. Again, we talk about, if I go back to this, what's physical performance training? I broke this down a little bit earlier in one of the slides into a few different physical qualities, just like you guys might do as technical and tactical coaches from a basketball perspective. We've got all these different areas that we can work on when it comes to technical and tactical performance. It's exactly the same for physical performance. So for us at Integrated Performance, we generally try to break our different qualities into these six different categories. So we're working on mobility, we're working on some stability qualities, we're working on movement competency, strength and power, speed and agility, and also endurance. So that's how we try and break down our training. Um, Now, what is physical performance training? I've already spoken about this, is we can work on these different aspects I just spoke about. We can work on them in isolation, in the gym, in our one-on-one programs. I guess that's what we do. That's what we specialize in. But I genuinely think, and this is where we want to go as a coaching provider as well, we want to learn, and we want to teach and coach our athletes in a more holistic environment. So sure, there's some things that we need to work on in the gym because of facilities and equipment and so on. But there's also a lot of things where we can work on physical training in addition to tactical and technical training. So ideally, and the drills and ideas I'm going to give you guys here are, we're going to try and meet in the middle as many of these as we can. So, can we work on drills which is combining both physical with tactical, or physical with technical, or ideally physical, technical, and tactical all together? And these areas are probably the areas I think which are the easiest to integrate into court training. Okay, so stability training, I think we can do quite easily in our basketball time. So let's say I've got 90 minutes or 2 hours of training. I think stability can be done quite comfortably. Speed and agility can be integrated pretty easily, and endurance training can be integrated pretty easily. Mobility can as well, but I think there's time that players can spend in their own time. It doesn't have to be taken from team time. Same goes for movement competency and strength and power. I think that's more of a specialized area where you might get a personal trainer or a strength and conditioning coach. People like us who are going to work with players to work on those things which need a little bit more technical knowledge and background in order to improve those areas. So I'll break these down now. We'll start with mobility. How can we work on mobility in practice in basketball? Firstly, why are we going to work on it? Well, in improving our range of motion or the range of our athletic movement is certainly important. And it helps decrease the risk of injury because we're taking pressure away from joints like our ankles, knees, adductors. How are we going to do this in practice? Well, some basic static and dynamic mobility in our preparation period, whether that be before training or at the start of training as a team, and also before games. So again, I think this is one of the areas where I think that we can work on a little bit. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it, but I do think that 5 or 10 minutes of dynamic mobility work is not 5 or 10 minutes wasted. I think it's a 5 or 10 minute investment in the quality of training and in the decrease in injury risk that we're going to have for our players. So it's a really important warming up activity and it really prepares our players for proper training intensity, again, as well as reducing our injury risk simply by warming up our muscle temperature and our increasing our range of movement in the short term. But also if we do these activities in the long term, we're going to improve our actual mobility and flexibility qualities. How are you going to do this? All right, I think from a practical perspective, I think we need to educate our players so that they can do some of that work on their own before training, while they're talking, while they're getting ready for training. And if we can, again, invest 5 or 10 minutes of team training time doing some sort of active mobility work, I think it's a really important part of the training process. Another little optional part there is obviously after training, that might be a place where we do our static flexibility and mobility work. Next category is working on stability. So why do we need stability? So here, I guess when I'm talking about stability, I'm really referring to how we can maintain control over our body segments and make sure that our joints and muscles and segments are moving optimally, but also in their most efficient and effective positions. So again, plays a really important role in injury risk, and I think in basketball in particular, it's such a dynamic sport, a lateral sport. It's played in all planes. We're jumping, we're landing, we're cutting left and right, we're turning, we're twisting. So we certainly need a lot of stability to protect our lower back, our hips, our knees, and our ankles. And it's really, really important. I'll cover this in the next couple of slides, but super important for both our younger and our older athletes. Again, so how we're going to do this, I've mentioned our lower body chain. So ankle, knee, and hip, they all need to be able to be stabilized together in a dynamic sense. So think about jumping, landing, and moving in multiple directions. That all requires ankle, knee, and hip stability. We want to keep our lower body, our lower back or lumbar spine strong and stable as well. While we're twisting in our upper body, we might be twisting in our lower body, but we want to protect our back. So our lower body plays an important role there to stabilize and basically connect our upper body movements with our lower body movements. Shoulder stability as well, not only in terms of how we're often obviously moving in lots of different areas with our shoulders to defend and attack, but also potential landing injuries if we do come down onto the ground. I'm going to play a couple of videos now, and this is a junior player that we ran through a physical performance camp last year at the club, and just a good example about okay, well, this is a player who, by all accounts, is a really talented player, physically and technically as a basketball player. And it's someone that I had identified. And when I saw this, I thought, okay, we need to do more now us, but also I think as a club to start to learn how we can help these athletes, these young athletes, with the kids, right? So I'm thinking about from a global perspective here, not just an athletic sense, is how can we help this player or this kid improve? Because watch how when we land, this is an example of a player who lacks the stability. that is needed to play basketball. So we can see there, I think I've mentioned before, if you can imagine drawing a line now between our hip, our knee, and our ankle or our foot, we can see that there's very limited stability in that landing mechanism. Now, I've played that really slowly, by the way. That's on slow motion. Now we're going to jump laterally as well, and I'll show you the jump here on the right screen, and you'll see the same thing. Our foot and ankle lose stability. Our hips are going everywhere, which means that we're just putting in an enormous amount of load through those three joints, right? Through ankle, through knee, and through hip. Um, the drill there, by the way, or the screening test that we did was a simple square hopping. So a single leg hopping forward, hopping laterally, hopping backwards, and hopping laterally again. So it's a planned drill. The athlete knows exactly where they need to jump, how far they need to jump. So in terms of a control to chaos continuum, this is on the very, very controlled side, right? And if an athlete can't control or stabilize themselves in a very controlled environment, then we can't expect them to be able to stabilize then in a game environment where we're jumping, we're landing, we're cutting, changing direction. So this is a great example of a young athlete who really needs to work on their stability. Okay. And if we don't do that, I think as a club and ourselves, I genuinely think that we're basically not doing everything that we can to help these kids as kids, but also in terms of their development for basketball. Because if they keep playing without developing this ability, they're going to one um, be probably put themselves at risk of injury, but two, even if there's no acute injury, these forces that are going through the joints are going to lead to a gradual breakdown in terms of a longer term a degeneration injury, whether that be knee cartilage, ankle pain, hip pain, whatever it might be. So yeah, I think we're doing a disservice if we can't try and improve these. And it's a really, really easy skill that we can improve. I'll go on to the next. Now, how do we improve our stability? There's a couple, again, quite easy drills that we can integrate into our technical training. Anything done on a single leg, providing that the goal of the athlete is to stabilize, is great for warm-ups, great for skill development because we can also keep doing things with our lower body, on our upper body, sorry. So we can do passing drills on a single leg trying to balance or trying to hop. We can do hopping and holding drills, just as I explained before. We can do jumping and landing drills, which is a little bit further than our hopping. And we can also work on our general core stability. So I'll play these videos first just to give you some really quick ideas about how we can work on our balance and stability. This is really simple single leg balance and passing drill. Now, you can make that much harder or much easier, right? Depending on the level that you're working with, changing the speed or the power of the pass, changing the direction of the pass. We've got another drill here. We've got a mini band around our knees here. So we're working on our lower body strength and lower body lateral ability. And this is great for stability as well when we're pushing laterally. And we've got another individual drill here working on dribbling with our mini band as well. So just some quick little ideas about how we can integrate this. Now that's a proper mini band, resistance band or glute band if you guys are familiar. You can buy a whole roll of this and simply cut them into smaller bands like this. And I think it will cost you $40 or $50 from Heart Sport. So a really easy way to do that. And you can have kind of 10 or 20 mini bands there for the whole year if you're worried about costs. Now, we're on the top right here in terms of how we integrate this into training. Okay, again, we can educate our players on some stability exercises, some balance drills that they can do before they start training. But like I've demonstrated here, it's pretty easy. You can do for 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes, some static and dynamic stability drills, which also involve some technical drills as well. Next part. Okay, cool. Our next part is working on athletic movement coordination and development. So, in terms of athletic movement training, again, this is the area that I said was a little bit more specialized. Absolutely no reason, and a lot of you coaches I know will have a background in physical education. If so, this might be an area that you're really comfortable with taking. Now, why is it important? It teaches them how to move correctly, in inverted commas, but it's really provides a foundation for building muscular and joint strength in our compound and primary athletic movements. If you don't have this background, this is the kind of area where you can refer to people like us, or there are a lot of different groups around now offering athletic training. How do we do this in session? So, if you are one of those coaches with a decent background in physical performance or physical education, best way to do this, I think, is in an athletic warm-up. So, again, I've already mentioned mobility and stability that can be done in warm-ups. We can throw some really basic athletic movements into our warm-up to make a dynamic movement warm-up as well. It might be things like squats, like lunges, like pushes and pulls. And again, if the goal of that isn't to tire your athletes out, I think it can be make a really, really good and simple full body warm up. Um, some coaches as well, depending on the level, probably talking about intermediate level now. If you're working with younger kids who you're really trying to push along a little bit, you might use some of these movements as an endurance drill as well. So doing squats or push-ups or squat jumps in between drills to try and improve their capacity to work. As long as they're doing it with good technique, I think that's a nice way of integrating this type of training as well, or even in a circuit after training. Strength and power, another area where I would say this is a specialized area, not only in terms of working with coaches who have skills and knowledge about how these exercises should be prescribed and the technique of these exercises, but simply in terms of equipment. So I think we can use bands and balls pretty comfortably on court, and that's what we would do with the NBL1 players. But in terms of obviously weights and proper resistance training, which you need to become stronger and more powerful, I think it's a really difficult and it's not worth, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So when it comes to integrating training or physical training into basketball, I would say this is one area where, sure, you can do some jumping power and some throwing power work if you've got bands and medicine balls. If we don't have access to that, the best way to do this is for players to come to the gym themselves, whether that's with us or on their own, and work on their general strength and power training. Speed and agility. Now, this is an area I think where if we're smart and we can integrate it with our whole training plan, I think this is an area that we can do a little bit better as well. Why work on speed and agility? Again, this is probably one area where I don't need to create too much buy-in. I think we know that improved speed and agility is strongly related to an improved basketball performance and performance in, a lot of different team court sports as well, but it also increases injury risk. And what I'm talking about there is if our players know how to run and they know how to change direction, it means that they're going to be doing that not only in a more effective way to perform or to be faster, but also in a way that decreases injury risk. How do we do this? Okay, strength and power training itself can be and is one of the most important things to work on speed and agility. But we can also improve, as I mentioned, the technique of these different phases or these different skills on the court. Um, there's an enormous genetic component to this as well. So we can certainly help in training, but a lot of what we have is thanks to our parents. I think the only reason I include that is because if you've got the slowest player you've ever seen on your team, yeah, you can make them faster, but you might not be able to get them to be the top end in terms of that physical quality itself. And I think I've just highlighted this part in orange. Now, this is the area I think we can do the best and how to integrate speed and agility training into basketball training itself, rather than having to create specific speed drills or agility drills. I think the best way we do this is to plan our sessions accordingly with the knowledge of how far our drills should be, how intense they should be running, and the work and rest times as well. So that I guess adjusting those three variables makes a big difference in terms of the speed and agility output of our players. And I'll go into just a little bit more detail here. So, to work on speed and agility, our number one priority must be high intensity, because if they're not running at maximal or near maximal intensity, that is to get from A to B as fast as they can or almost as fast as they can, it means that we're not working on speed or agility. They also need to have longer recovery times, because if we're not doing that, we're actually not able to perform these actions at high intensity. Okay. Um, these last 2 points are, I guess, a nice way or an easy way to explain. Okay, well, if we want to make our players fast, then we need to give them lots of space to run. So for actual running speed, if we want to improve our running speed of our players, we need space for them to actually gain velocity close to full court, if not full court. So we're talking about a full transition drill where the players are running at intensity, i.e. very close to as fast as they can, in order to work on their speed. If we want to work on acceleration and change of direction, we need the opposite. We still need high intensity, so the intent to get from A to B really fast, but it needs to be done in short space where we're accelerating fast, we might decelerate fast, and then have to turn in another direction, or whatever it might be for that movement. So yeah, small spaces for agility and change of direction speed is required. How do we work on these? I think because they require intensity, we need to be warm, so it can't be done at the very start of training. You can do some of that at the very end of training, but I think the best part is either early or mid training. Early is best if you want to maximize their intensity to make sure they're ready, but also they're not already tired. But if you do want to work on the endurance aspect, i.e., speed endurance and agility endurance, then this can be done in the middle or towards the end of the training session. A really quick pointer here, when you're looking at how your players transition in particular, if they need to go from attack to defense or defense to attack, this 180-degree turn, you'll see a lot of players trying to turn off one foot. And I think that's just one area that we can, that's one area that we can improve really, really quickly is turning off 2 feet. It's like saying if you've got a car and if you can use two brakes versus four or one brake versus two, you're always going to try and use, the option with that which has a greater braking ability. So same goes with deceleration and change of direction. You want to use two brakes, so 2 feet connected to the floor, and you want to use two cylinders, rather than one cylinder pushing off one leg, push off both legs as well. That's just a quick one. Have a look at your players and how they turn, and that's a really easy cue that you can provide them if they're struggling to change direction. Next one, integrating endurance training. So endurance, what I'm talking about here is energy system endurance, and endurance as it's in itself is an umbrella term. What we're really talking about depends on, what the activity is. So are we talking about our immediate endurance, which is our ATP fuel tank here on the left? Are we talking about our medium-term fuel supply, which is our glycolytic system, provides energy for around 30 seconds to 6 minutes? Or are we working on our long-term energy supplies, our aerobic endurance capacity, anything longer than that? So I think that's important for coaches to realize is if you want to improve their endurance, well, what aspect of endurance do you want to improve? I'll cover this later, but of course, basketball involves and requires all of these different energy systems, right? Not just one. But yeah, in terms of how we can improve endurance, firstly, be really aware of how hard your efforts are with the players and how long that they can sustain them for. So for endurance efforts, if you've got a drill or an exercise or a fitness drill, can they This is a good way to think about it. Can they maintain that intensity for 6 minutes or longer? If they can maintain it comfortably for more than 6 minutes, it's you're certainly working on aerobic endurance, okay? So that's good, working on aerobic endurance, but we're not really working on anything else. If you think that they can maintain that intensity for 6 minutes, more or less, but they can only just maintain it, that is highly effective training because we're working on an intensity there which is close to our maximal aerobic capacity. So we're doing a really effective job, i.e., it takes only a short amount of time relatively, but we're working out our aerobic system almost to its maximal capacity. If they can't maintain that intensity, so you've got a drill that they're running and sprinting and transitioning, if they can't keep doing that for 6 minutes, then we're working on anaerobic energy tank, okay? When it comes to our maximal efforts, so not our endurance efforts, can they, if any efforts which are less than 5 or 10 seconds, that's working on our immediate storage. Anything for more than 10 seconds, we're working on our glycolytic storage. So again, I just think it's good for coaches to realize and take into account. So if your goal as a coach is to improve your aerobic endurance, then make sure you're actually giving them an opportunity. They're not always working at absolute max intensity because if they're doing that, they're already fatigued and they're not actually working the right tank or the tank that you planned on working on. Where can endurance training be integrated into training? I mentioned before, firstly, in terms of the physical demands of basketball, if you have a player, or most players playing 40 minutes plus, or the vast majority of the game, they certainly need a decent level of aerobic endurance. But given it's such a high intensity and transition based game, uh, certainly our glycolytic, so our medium term storage, and our short term power and maximal effort energy storage tank as well is very highly utilized. So yeah, we can't pick and choose and we can't only work on one of these areas. We need to be working on a combination of those three areas when it comes to training. How we work on this in training and where do we implement this? I think early to mid stage of training is a really good way to, one, it's when they're fresh, so we can get the most out of them in terms of the energy. And it also means that after that, the players will be training skills under fatigue. If you want to prioritize the quality of skills, then of course move your endurance block to later in the session and prioritize that players are completing your technical and tactical aspects of training first really well, and then your endurance training might be done after that. As always, I think a bit of a combination of both is best, and I would certainly start pre-season and the first phase of the season working on endurance at the end of the session or towards the end of the session. And then later on, as a way to progress that, I would then probably do some endurance drills and endurance focus earlier in the session to then have more of a combined technical and physical or endurance emphasis when it comes to skills and technical execution under fatigue. Perfect. So our last little part here, some really short-term strategies to improve basketball performance. This is an area that we're pretty strong on. I think it's a really, really easy way to maximize your training quality from players, to decrease injuries, and also I just think it prepares players and they're really ready, whether that be for a psychological reason or a physical reason. I think a solid physical warm-up and almost priming session can really, really improve our performance for training and game day. So activation and injury prevention, what is it? Really just a full body warm up, right? So it's a full warm up, but including some specific exercises to activate our body and to prepare it, for the physical demands of basketball. Why do we do it? Prepare for quality training and match, but also helps develop over the long term, I think, really good habits and also attributes for basketball performance. If you multiply the amount of 10, 15-minute warm-ups that we do over the whole season, that certainly adds up. So we, one, make sure we're not wasting that time, but two, understand that that time accumulated over a whole season or over an athlete's career, this is an opportunity to improve attributes, right? Not simply just to warm up. So the priming activation, how does it work? Again, I reckon a 12 to 16 minute investment, that can be a tiny bit shorter. It can be a tiny bit longer for sure as well. How do we do that? A really easy 3 to 4 minutes of easy activity to raise our heart rate, whether that means jogging, walking, shooting around, but just really getting our body moving, okay? And getting our whole body moving. So certainly a shoot around and doing some basketball drills at low intensity is a good way to do this. It doesn't need to simply just be jogging or walking without the ball. Our mobilize phase, another 3 to 4 minutes of this is okay, starting to integrate some mobility exercises to increase our range of motion at key joints. So for us, that's certainly lower body, hips, our upper body rotation, working on dynamic stretching and mobility exercises. After this, we really want to start to activate our muscles. So, okay, some dynamic movements now, starting to activate our working muscles. So, our lower body, think about our glutes, our quads, our hamstrings, our calves, but working on some core warm-up movements, things like shuffling, skipping, jumping, things like that. And lastly, we're looking to potentiate. So this is 3 to 4 minutes of explosive, high intensity of movements. Okay. So now we're talking about not just little jumps or hops, but maximal or near maximal jumping, maximal or near maximal throwing, rotating, running, braking, and turning. So I guess really when you look at it all, it's literally just a bit of it's a ramp protocol where we're going from low intensity to high intensity. And again, here is now some examples of these different categories. So if you're familiar with these movements, then that's great. If not, feel free to throw them into YouTube. I'm sure you'll find all of these exercises there. But there's some ideas here for mobility training, the mobility section of that warm up, that is, the activation section, and the potentiate section as well. I think if we can combine that together, even if it's a shorter version for training and then a longer version for games, this is an area certainly where we found a really nice feedback from players and coaches, and they're really surprised with, I guess the simplicity of how easy it is to implement a proper priming or a proper warm up. That's how I look at it, to be honest. And the effect it has on training quality and game performance. Perfect. So where to from here? Obviously, and I've stressed it already, but please, if you do have any questions or interest to chat about this any further in your own context, your own coaching perspective, make sure you get in touch because I know that's an area that we want to improve. And if you're interested to chat, then I'm more than happy to help. If you do have any athletes that you come across in your teams as coaches or parents, please make sure that you refer them to us if they are after or are in need of, some specific strength and conditioning training or athletic performance training. We're obviously involved at MBL 1 level, and we're hoping to have more and more involvement at our lower levels as well. For now, we're working just on a referral base for our other clubs and our other teams and players. So make sure you get in touch for any questions, and more than happy to have a chat/consult with all of the coaches. To make sure you develop and implement some sort of physical training activities in practice. Okay, I understand that it might provide you with a couple of ideas of how to change some things or change the order even of some drills, but hopefully I've given you some other ideas as well. And like I mentioned, follow up with us for further support, whether that be for individuals that that you can refer to us. If you want us to come down and run a full S&C session or show you how to integrate these physical performance drills into your training sessions, we're more than happy to collaborate with you guys on this as well. So please get in touch, and we can arrange with the club on how and the best way to do that. Perfect. Here's our contact details here. We've got our website at integrativeperformance.com.au. And also, if I move my mouse here, our Instagram page at Integrative Performance Training. Perfect. Thanks, guys, and hopefully we'll be in touch. Bye.